Dun dun dun. Long time no chat again. I'm like, I, f- I don't know why I'm sitting here like I'm supposed to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, this is honestly, I'm hurting myself by not like posting as frequently as I need to be. I'm getting on it. I have some guest episodes lined up from some people I have out here in Vancouver. I went home for a bit, didn't really have time with like exams and the end of school and stuff to like record all those episodes before I left. So obviously, since my motto is all about having, understanding and patience for others, I need to have understanding and patience for myself and understand that, you know, I have my life and I had things that I needed to do. And so now I'm here and I'm back and yay. So hopefully you guys are excited as I am because I am just so ready to kickstart this podcast. Like these first 5 episodes and like including this one, was kind of me just establishing my ground and getting some episodes out there that like my guests, if they don't know me, will be able to listen to, and hopefully that'll give them some reassurance on what they're walking into and the kind of person that they're going to be having a discussion with, because I want people to be proud that to be like associated with me. I don't want people to have to come on a podcast blindly without being able to listen to some content. So that's what I was just kind of doing now as I finished school and got myself settled in the summer. And I'm going to I don't know how I'm going to advertise, but I'm going to figure it out. And hopefully we're going to grow a lot in the summer. And then once the fall hits, I'm going to have so many classmates and profs to be talking to and so much like class material that I'm going to want to talk about with you guys. So I'm so excited that this is finally getting started. It honestly like feels like a dream sitting here in this room talking into this microphone, because something I've always wanted to do is like I don't know, like it was first I was a vet and then I wanted to be like a teacher and then a psychologist and a doctor and all of these things, and I've kind of noticed a pattern, and everything I've decided I wanted to be was a lot about just talking to people and like helping where I can and like developing skills that are helpful and like useful to people. And I don't know, I think that this is something that's going to be really great for myself and my community, and I'm just like so excited to start having you guys all on and like have all these talks. And I'm just like, sometimes I see these podcast clips like on TikTok and I just think like I can't wait to be having healthy discussions, because a lot of these, they bring people on their podcast that they know disagree with them and they just argue with each other, and it's awful to listen to. Because I don't know about you guys, some people like listening to arguments and listening to people fight. Me personally, I find it very difficult to listen to arguments. I'm like not to be like this, and I'm not like an astrology guru or anything like that. I just think it's funny. Like, I'm like a Libra moon, like I like the balance. I like the peace. I don't like when people are arguing and you can see both sides, but they're not seeing each other's side and it's just going around in circles. And that's my least favorite thing. So, what I'm really excited for is to host healthy discussions and conversations with people, because I'm so excited. Because maybe I've said this before, but it's just brief. Like, once I started learning about the stuff that I'm going to talk about in this episode, actually, when I would post things on my Instagram story, I started responding differently to people. I started, taking a step back and understanding, where could they be at in their life where they're going to respond this way to something that I have to say? Like, what do I want to choose? How do I want to choose to respond to this? And there was a period in my life where I would have just responded like, well, F you, like, I don't, you know what I mean? Whatever. But now I found that when I respond with patience, 9 times out of 10, I end up having a really, really wonderful conversation with people. And I would say 5 times out of 10, like 50% of the time, it's literally because they misunderstood something that I said. Like, my intention was to say this and they heard it or read it this way, like 50% of the time. And if I had responded with, well, I don't like you either, then I don't think that we would have come to that. I would have spent my whole life thinking that they're rude and ignorant or whatever, and they're going to spend their whole life thinking I said something that I didn't. So I think sometimes, and I mean this very, very like situationally, sometimes you can't respond with patience to people, because if they're attacking you, if they're being violent towards you, if they're like triggering you, whatever, sometimes you need to get out of the situation. You don't have to educate them. You don't have to be patient with them. I'm talking about when you have someone that kind of, passive aggressively comes at you, or like sends you a very blunt, like kind of attacking message that's not directed at like who you are. They're not attacking you, but they seem angry at something that you said or something that you did. Just try being like, I want to understand why you're upset that I said this. You know what I mean? Because I've had some really nice conversations with people that have really turned around. And it's emotional labor for sure. If you're not in the headspace, I think it's best to just say to someone, like, I would love to have a conversation with you about this, but I'm really sorry I can't do that right now. So, like, leave it, whatever. And, you don't have to apologize. This is all, like, just something I would say you need to add your own twist to it and how you can be authentic to yourself. I'm the type of person that apologizing to someone like in that way doesn't make me feel like I was in the wrong. You know what I mean? Like, apologizing to someone doesn't make me feel any less valid in how I felt about the situation. So for me, it's easy for me to say, I'm sorry, I can't do this right now. But for some people, apologizing is a trigger for them. It's an admission of guilt. It's something that they've been trying really hard to stop doing. So in a situation like that, you don't have to apologize. Where I'm getting with this is that everything I say is not down to the specifics. It's more just like generalized advice. Anyways, I want to get into the topics of today with just like a kind of little story that I saw in like a TikTok I saw a couple days ago. And Maddie, like my friend Maddie, she brought this up to me today, and she was like, you should start the episode with this. And I was like, that's a really good idea. So I'm going to start it. And some of you guys may know this, some of you may not, but it's pretty quick. Anyways, so there's a painting in a gallery. This isn't like, I don't think it's a true story. I think it's just like one of those lesson stories, but it could be a true story. I'm not really 100% sure. Anyways, there's a painting in a gallery, and it's displaying something, and it's hard to tell what the painting is about unless you read the sign. So like, it kind of looks really vulgar and kind of gross, and like, why would you put it there? And then when you read the sign, it's like, oh, it makes sense. So I'm just going to say, for like the sake of, making the story more understandable, the painting is about, not having a parent in your life, or losing a parent. Let's say that. It's about losing a parent. But the painting is just a kid, like, standing, like, I don't know, and all slunched over, and there's a bunch of, like, I don't know, like blood, or I'm not sure. It's a gross painting, and it doesn't really make sense unless you know what you're trying to interpret from it. Anyway, the point of the story is that some people walk by and they're like, what is that? And they just like keep walking. They're kind of like grossed out by it. They just keep going. Some people walk by and they're just amazed. Wow, this is so good. They don't even have to read the sign because they've experienced the loss of a parent, or they know someone that has experienced it. They know that feeling. They can see it in the painting, right? And then there's some people that walk by, they're like, what is this? And then they read the sign, and all of a sudden they're moved, they're touched. It's all of a sudden something ugly is beautiful. It means something. It has loss. It has a story behind it. And then there's some people that walk by and they become so angry that they destroy the painting. They start like trying to like ruin it and like take it down off the wall. And kind of like the message of the story is take the time to try to understand someone else. Because I think a big part of this world comes from we see people, but we don't know them. We don't try to understand them. We don't try to see from their perspective. We don't try to walk in their shoes. And it's so, so, so easy to become angry and hateful and violent when you never stop to think about how other people feel, or you never try to walk in their shoes. And it's not something that comes naturally. It's something that you have to learn. It's empathy, it's compassion, it's understanding, right? And so I was watching a documentary in one of my GRSJ classes last year, I think, maybe the year before. I think last year though. And it was about transformative justice. And if you're not familiar with transformative justice, it's different in many, it's practiced differently in all Indigenous cultures, but it comes from just Indigenous origins. And it's essentially the idea that when someone does something wrong, whether it's, stealing from their neighbor or murdering someone, whatever it may be, like you use the harm that they have done onto the community to find out why. So it's not like you don't just want to find out why they did it, but you want to really know why they did it. Because a lot of the time on the surface, you ask, why did they do it? Oh, he wanted to marry his mistress, so he killed his wife. But that's not really the reason why he killed his wife. People don't just do that. Normal people get a divorce and then they marry someone else. So what transformative justice does is it asks, did that man go through abuse as a child? Like what behaviors did he learn from his parents? What taught him that was the answer to what he was doing? What guided him to make that decision? Because it's not a common decision, right? And it's the same thing with, on the minor scale, stealing, right? You look at the community. Why do we have people in our community that are so in need that they're breaking into people's homes and cars and stealing their things? Why do we have people that have so much and people that have so little? And those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves in our community. And that's what transformative justice is. It says there is something wrong that has been done. The perpetrator doesn't walk free and just get let off because it's not their fault. They made a choice to do something. But the bigger picture is that people after them are going to keep making those choices if we don't fix the reason why that person made the choice in the first place. It's not that you use whatever happened to this person as an excuse. You don't excuse their behavior. They have to take accountability for their behavior. They have to rectify whatever they have done as best they can. And, whatever justice is for that situation needs to be had. But at the same time, we don't just focus on this individual situation. We say, how do we prevent children from growing up in a society that teaches them that instead of, just getting a divorce and marrying someone else, that the option would be to kill your partner. So, and that's an extreme, obviously, but that's just kind of my, the first example that came to my head thinking about transformative justice, but it's such a deep and powerful conversation that I would really prefer to go into specifically transformative justice with an Indigenous guest who has practiced it and can tell me about it and tell you guys more about it, because I know about it at a very surface level. I read about it, but I've never participated in transformative justice circles. I've never been in Indigenous communities when they facilitate these kind of conversations, and I am not qualified to sit here and host like a whole episode about it. But so essentially, back to the documentary. The documentary is about transformative justice, and it was about just a bunch of people that instead of going to prison, they were met with transformative justice. And there was this one kid, and he stole an old lady's car. And the documentary people went to the old lady, and they asked her, before they said anything to her about anything they're doing, they asked her, what do you want to happen to the kid? And she said, I want him to go to prison, obviously. Like, she was like, I want him in jail, like, people shouldn't, you know what I mean? She was very angry. Then what they had her do is they had the kid come over to her house and help her with chores around her house. And they said, if you still want to press charges on him, I think it was like within a certain time frame, maybe like a week or 2 weeks, then you can still do that. And like there was this whole, agreement that goes into documentary situations between like the police, the lady, and like the film crew and the people facilitating and organizing these like transformative justice opportunities for people, right? So, and the old lady agreed. She said, yeah, he can help me out with chores and, like mowing her lawn, cleaning her house, fixing things, whatever she needed him to do, he did, running errands. And at the end of the 2 weeks, she had gotten to know him so well that she actually realized that he was an artist and he was very good at art. So when they asked her again, what do you want to happen to this kid? What would you like? What would you see as justice? She said, I would like him to paint me a painting. And I'm getting emotional because what it was is that kid stole her car because he really needed a car. And it's not right to steal her car. But what happens when you learn about someone else and when you get to know someone else, you realize that like life is really, really hard. And you have to make hard choices sometimes. And a lot of people are put in positions in their life and taught things that are not good for them, and they're guided in the wrong direction. And he was just a kid. He was just a kid, and he needed a car. He needed to go to work and to school. And I'm not saying he wasn't going to use the car to like speed or do things that teenagers do, but at the end of the day, he wasn't stealing the car to steal a car. He was stealing the car because he had need. He was in need. And when she took the time to get to know him, she saw someone. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a thief. He was just a kid. He was an artist. He was a friend. He was a brother. He was a son. He was all of these things that she never saw him as before, because she didn't, there was no humanization. There was no personal touch. And I think that it's so important when you have something like that happen, when comfortable, like we need to be pulling these people in and asking ourselves the hard questions. Why are kids stealing cars to get to school and to get to work? Why do we live in a society where kids have to steal cars to stay alive and to function and to be a member of society? That is what's unjust. That is injustice. And sending that kid to jail will never prevent car theft. It will never, ever, ever end car theft. We could put every car thief that's ever stolen a car in jail right now, and it would still not prevent car theft, because car thieves are not just born car thieves. They steal cars because they need them. They need them to sell them for money. They need them to drive themselves around. They need to steal them for someone else that's making them do it. Whatever their reason may be. Babies don't just come out of the womb thinking, I'm going to steal a car. I was born to steal cars. And there are, obviously, I don't think everything is a learned behavior. Obviously, there's some people that struggle with mental health issues that are more than society has given them, but that is a very, very, very low percentage of people in compared to people that are in jail, people that are in prison, people that have been a part of the carceral justice system. Most people that are involved in that are people that learned the behaviors that landed them in prison from the society that they live in. So, I don't know, like I think about that story with the like older woman so often because if she had never met that kid, she would have never changed her mind, she would have never opened her mind, and she would have never gotten to that point where she and him were both healed from that experience. And I think that's another thing that's really important is that this kind of conversation and this kind of community building, when someone does an act of harm and you pull them in and you ask and you say, I see you, I see why you did this. It was still wrong, you shouldn't have done it, but I see why you did it. When somebody knows that you see them and that you understand them, it's so much easier to take accountability when you feel like you're seen and when you feel like you're heard. So I want everyone that's listening right now, I want you to think of a time in your life where you did something wrong, but you didn't admit it because you felt like the other person didn't understand why you did it. You know? And like for example, it could be something very small, like I don't know, I forgot someone's birthday because my dog passed away the week before and I've just been such a mess. I totally forgot about their birthday, right? You feel awful about forgetting their birthday, of course, but you didn't forget their birthday because you wanted to. You forgot it because you had something traumatic happen to you, right? And if they come to you, I can't believe you forgot my birthday. How could you do this? You're the worst friend ever. You're automatically, understandably, going to be like, well, my dog just passed away. Like, how could you say this? You're the worst friend. You know what I mean? But if they had come to you and said, hey, what's going on? I'm really upset that you missed my birthday. Like, did something happen? Are you okay? Like, why didn't you reach out? And automatically, all of a sudden, they see you. They're trying to understand you. They're trying to reach out to you. They're upset at the situation. They're upset you didn't reach out, but they're not attacking you. They're not assuming anything. They're just asking you to explain because they want to understand you. And all of a sudden you feel accepted and seen and understood, and you instead would probably respond with, I'm so sorry, I forgot, I feel so bad, my dog passed away last week, it's just been awful, I know that's not an excuse. It's so much easier to apologize when someone asks or is like asking that of you from a place of understanding. I'm trying to understand why you did what you did. Can you explain it to me? You know, because automatically that opens up the doors. They're trying to see you. They don't think you're a bad person. They don't think that you intentionally did anything wrong. They're trying to understand why you did what you did. And this is a really difficult thing to do. It's emotionally demanding because sometimes people will do wrong things to you and you try to reach out to them with understanding and you still get shut down. But like I said when I kind of wrote in the caption of my episode announcement, learning and growing and evolving as a person, you start to realize that it's actually significantly more difficult to have understanding for people, and it almost feels like, you know, sometimes you'll feel like, why am I doing this? You know, why am I being patient? Why am I being kind? And something that I try to think about, and again, I want to say, I'm not talking about when people are attacking you like violently or like, you know, hate criming you. I'm those are their own situations, and I would like never expect anyone to have like patience and kindness and understanding in that situation. You can if that's where you are in your life, but that's definitely not what I'm discussing in this. But I found that when I look back on times where I've responded to someone that has done something to me with empathy, I have no regrets. I don't feel anxious about it. I don't feel upset. I feel proud of the way I responded. I feel happy. I feel peaceful. But when I think back to times in my life where I have been angry and I've attacked people and I have like looked for revenge and I've said things, all I feel is regret because the anger didn't get me anywhere. Anger didn't make me feel better. Revenge didn't make me feel better. Trying to make people feel bad didn't make me feel better. All of that work happens on your own. It's not something that they give to you. And apologies are awesome. But if they're not ready to apologize, it's better for you to say, I'm okay with where you're at, than force it or try to make them feel bad. Because what you do when you try to make someone feel bad is you end up removing any chance of them ever admitting if they ever feel bad, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, at least for me, if I don't think I did anything wrong and someone's trying to make me feel bad, even if I started to feel bad, I wouldn't say that, because it's like, or at least I wouldn't want to. Like, I want to say, like, maybe I would, like, because where I'm at in, like, my own personal growth and stuff. But there was a point in my life where I wouldn't have, because you want to be stubborn. And, you know, they're trying to make you feel bad, and it feels manipulative. So, I don't know. Sometimes when I look back on situations, I really wish that I took the time to just, and it's not even, I didn't even have to be kind. I spent so much time and energy being angry and trying to make them feel the way that I felt. And all that did was make me feel worse, because it forced me to hold on to it. It forced me to hold on to anger and sadness and fear and shame and like disappointment in myself and all of these things. And I held on to those things for so long because I wanted revenge. I was angry, and I chose, instead of trying to heal on my own, that I wanted an apology. So I would get angry on social media. I would be angry to my friends, all because I just wanted them to reach out and feel bad and feel sad like I felt and feel guilty, but it never made me feel better. The only thing that ever made me feel better was the day that I decided I wasn't going to spend my energy being angry anymore. And I decided instead, when I feel angry, I'm going to sit with it and then I'm going to let it pass. I'm not going to hold on to it. I'm not going to go around and put it out into every relationship I have, how angry I am and, you know, how I wish them bad things or whatever. And I don't know, I look back and I wish I had saved my energy, and I wish I had used it instead to take care of myself and love my friends and work on my relationships that I have. And yeah, so that's just kind of some of my advice, is that if you're in a situation where someone has done something awful to you, you don't have to be kind to them. You don't have to say it's okay. You don't have to allow it to be an excuse, but find an explanation. And then when you understand them, you allow yourself to feel how you feel about it. But then you allow your understanding of why they did what they did to ease your anger and that like explosive, fiery, like sadness and just like anxiety and all of the things that come from being hurt by someone is just wanting them to feel the way that you feel and just being so betrayed and heartbroken and all of these things. And when you feel that way, you need to validate your feelings 100%. You need to say, it's totally understandable I feel this way. What they did to me was awful. But then you also need to take a deep breath, think about why they did what they did, and use that to not allow your anger to overtake you and to start punishing them. Because what punishment does is it breaks community. It breaks you, it hurts your relationships, it hurts your personal life, it hurts the way that you're living, it hurts your routine, and it'll affect the people that are closest to you. When I was holding on to that anger, like everybody in my life had to witness me constantly angry and constantly bitter, and they had to navigate all of these things and had to listen to me constantly be angry and hateful and bitter and just like explosive, and they had to take on all of that emotional burden from me all of the time. And I want to be careful. It's hard to talk about because I don't ever want somebody to listen to this and like start invalidating their own feelings and like start being overly gracious of people that have hurt them. I want you to know that if someone hurts you and you don't want them in your life anymore, then you can still be having compassion and empathy and understanding for them while also saying, I would prefer it if we don't speak and we don't interact anymore. That's okay. It's okay. You can say, I understand why you did what you did. At the end of the day, it really hurt me and I don't think I want to be your friend anymore. That's okay. That doesn't mean you didn't forgive them. That doesn't mean you're being mean. That doesn't mean you're holding on to anger. That's not what holding on to anger is. You don't have to forgive and forget and move on. What you need to do is not sit there and constantly ask yourself, why did they do this to me? Why would they do this to me? What's wrong with me? What are all of these things? Me. It's not about you. How you feel is valid, but what they did is probably not about you. It's about them. It's not your fault. It's not your own like shortcomings. It's something to do with them. They're going through something. They are on their own path in their life. They have their own values that don't align with yours, whatever it may be. I think a big problem is when someone does something to us, we go full victim. Me, poor me, pity me. I can't believe they did this to me. How could they do this to me? This evil person, like I've never done anything wrong. And all of those things may be true. You may have been an amazing friend to them, all of these things. What they did to you was probably not about you. It's not about your worth as a person. It's not about who you are in your core. It's not that you're not good enough. They are going through their own thing in their life. And so what understanding why someone did what they did does is it allows you to not sit there, why me? Why would they do this to me? You all of a sudden are like, oh, yeah, even though it was horrible what they did, I could see how, what they're going through caused them to do that to me. And it doesn't mean that you have to be okay with it. It doesn't mean that you have to feel better. It doesn't mean that you have to be nice to them. It doesn't mean that you have to forgive them. It just means that you're not sitting there revolving this whole thing around your self-worth. Because what ends up happening is we take things that aren't about us because we feel hurt, rightfully so, and we turn it into this big thing that we just don't understand anymore. And it's so frustrating, and it makes you angry because it's like, why? Why would they do this to me? I can't believe they did this to me. I'm so upset. Like, I'm so hurt. I would never do this to them. Of course, but of course you wouldn't, because you're not in their shoes. You're not them. You have no idea what they were going through when they made that decision. And I look back on times in my life where people have done things to me, and I think about those people, and sometimes I have these moments where I remember a story about someone, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I wish I had thought about this when I was so angry at them, because that's awful to go through. And I never really thought about that when they did that to me. So again, it's having an understanding of why someone did what they did is not important because you're going to allow it to be an excuse, but it's important in the way that it allows you to frame the situation as, they have hurt you, yes, you are hurt, but it's not because you're worthless. It's not because you deserved it. It's not because you did anything wrong. It's not because they, even not necessarily even because they wanted to hurt you. It's a lot of people are really struggling, and we're all just trying to make it through, and some people cope with things worse than others. And like, you guys know that saying that's like, the victim becomes the abuser, and then we've actually started saying the victim becomes the abuser unless they heal, because that's the most important part. Is sometimes you have people who are the victim of a situation, and they heal, and they're able to heal from it and move on and have a life where they don't repeat those same patterns. But what happens when you have someone that's a victim of, and I'm not just talking about like physical abuse, I'm talking about any kind of like trauma in their lives, especially in their childhood. When you have someone that's not able to heal from that, they're going to recreate those same cycles in their life. And it's not something that they do consciously. Sometimes they may recognize their patterned behavior, but it's something that's going on subconsciously. And I have so many stories of times where, a friend of mine has started talking to someone, or even I've started talking to someone, and what ends up happening is you have this person who is very insecure. And I'm not saying I haven't been there. I've been there. Everybody's been there. But I'm just talking about a perspective where I'm seeing someone else being insecure. Like, not to say that I don't have my own faults, again, but you have a person who's very insecure, and they will cheat. They cheat in a relationship because they have their own stuff going on in their lives. Whatever the reason for them cheating may be, it is never, 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 never because you are inherently not good enough, because you did anything wrong, because you are not what you should be. People cheat for a lot of reasons, and every single time that I've had a situation with like a friend that I've known, or like anybody, when you have a partner that cheats, it's because they don't love themselves. And I've seen it again and again and again, because when you confront them, they always say, it's because I don't love myself. And I think a lot of the time we hear that, and we just get even more angry, rightfully so, because they cheated on us. But when you step back and you say, I have a right to be hurt, I have a right to be angry, I have a right to break up with them and tell them I never want to see them again, and that is totally valid and is a valid response to the situation. But they cheated on me. They're telling me they cheated on me because they don't love themselves. It's not because of me. It's not because of anything I did or the person that I am. This has everything to do with them. And when you have that understanding for someone, all of a sudden, and like this is where it comes into like cancel culture, you don't want to cancel them anymore. You know what I mean? You may not want to talk to them, or you may want an apology from them. You may want to go your own separate ways. But You don't have this like anger towards them that just you hold on to for so long. And with that, I'm going to give 2 book recommendations this episode. The first one is Turn This World Inside Out, The Emergence of Nurturance Culture by Nora Samaran. This is a beautiful, beautiful book if you want to learn about like the problems with masculinity, and I'm not talking about problems with masculinity like in the inherently like masculine whatever. I'm hear me out. The problems with toxic masculinity and the problems with a culture that, teaches men that, they can't be loved and they can't be cared for. And it's a book about how we need to start nurturing people, especially men, and all people deserve nurturance. And she actually, I'm just maybe going to give like a quick trigger warning for like mentions of sexual violence, not a specific story, but I'm going to be like saying words and talking about things. And she says the opposite of rape culture is nurturance culture. And she, in this book, talks about how men, mostly men, and this is, a lot of women are taught this too, but men especially, they are not taught that it's okay to be vulnerable and to ask to be cared for. And, for a lot of people, sex is something that they need in a relationship and that they want and that makes them feel good and makes them feel valued and makes them feel intimate. And what ends up happening is men especially, but people of all genders, they're ashamed to ask to be loved and to be cared for and to be nurtured, especially intimately and sexually, so they just don't ask. They just do it. They take it because they're told that when they ask for it, that's feminine. It's not masculine, and therefore they are lesser than and they're less valuable as a person when they ask, And she talks about a lot of different things, but this is such a beautiful book, and it's one of the books that actually really moved me and taught me to never kind of buy into buy at least too far into saying that like it's anything wrong with men. It's what men are being taught, and it's what a lot of women are taught as well. And it's a beautiful book. It's beautiful. It moved me to tears many, many times. And it reminded me of a lot of times in my life where I should have talked to men in my life about what they were going through and asked them if they were okay. And I didn't, because I wanted to be angry at the way that they behaved. And when you read this book, you just start to be able to see why some people do what they do. It's not right. It's not fair. It's not what they should be doing. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. And once you understand it, the beautiful thing, and I've said this in episodes before, it's what I love about social justice and learning about these things, is that when you understand why things are the way that they are, they're not impossible to solve anymore. They're not just something that happens. They're something that happens for a reason, and there's something that has solutions. So when she says the opposite of rape culture is nurturance culture, she's saying that to end rape culture, we need to bring nurturance back into our homes, into our communities, into our lives. And we need to nurture all people, but especially our men, because they're the ones that get the least of it. We need to nurture them in their childhoods and all the way into their adulthoods, so that when they need something, when they have needs, when they need care, when they need love, when they need support, that they don't feel lesser than when they ask for it, because they deserve it just as much as anyone else does. But what happens is they feel ashamed to want it. They feel ashamed to need it. They feel ashamed to need love and support. And the whole thing that's like, guys like being all like gushy gushy with their girlfriends, and then they notice she's filming and they just stop, because it's like they're embarrassed that they're in love, and they're embarrassed that they feel vulnerable and that they feel warm and that they need care and like snuggles and intimacy. And I'm honestly like that too. Like, I have to admit, I'm in therapy and I'm working on it a lot, but it's really hard for me to be vulnerable. And I have the same reaction sometimes when my friends, like, even if they're not filming me, like, it's hard for me to say to them in a vulnerable way, like, I love you guys, and I really care about you. It's hard for me to do, especially when they make like a big deal out of it, or when it's pointed out, because I feel so vulnerable and I just like shut down, and I feel like embarrassed and ashamed, because and I don't know why. And I'm still working on it, but and a lot of people feel like that too. And I it's something I see so much on TikTok, and I honestly, every time I see one of those videos, I just feel so sad, because it's like, this person has never been taught in their life that it's okay to be vulnerable and to be open and to, love someone and care about someone like that. Because like, he's obviously gonna, the whole comment section is, oh, he's fighting for his life in the group chat, blah blah blah, because you have all these other people that are making fun of him for being vulnerable. We live in a society that teaches people, especially men, that it's embarrassing to do things like that. But all he was doing was just being in love. He needed the intimacy and the touch and the connection, and he was just so happy he was expressing it. But we post videos like that online, and all we do is teach men that that's not okay, and that what ends up happening is they just take it. They don't ask for care. They just take their needs how they see fit. And I'm not saying that it's only men that do it. People of all genders do things like that. But what I'm saying is that it's especially men who are the victims of that mindset and that part of society that attacks you for being vulnerable. So, of course, it's a lot of men who turn to not asking for care and not asking for love, and just seeking it out in the way that they want it and that they think that is good, and they don't have to be vulnerable. So, anyways, if you guys have the time, Turn This World Inside Out: The Emergence of Nurturance Culture. It's a beautiful book. You can tell she took the time to really sit down and just think about every word, and just have such compassion and care for like such a beautiful idea. And I just love her. Anyways, and then the second one is Adrienne Maree Brown. We Will Not Cancel Us. And she is an amazing, amazing, amazing author. And I have like so many of her books, and I've read so much of her stuff, and she is just so inspiring and very moving. And she talks about, transformative justice and cancel culture. And she talks about how it's a huge problem in activism and social justice communities, and it's something that, social justice is very much criticized for, is our quickness and swiftness to just cancel people. And I've done this in my life. I've done this on social media. I've been a part of this, and it's not getting us anywhere. It's not going to help. And like, before I get into this, I'm going to say there is some people that need to be deplatformed. When you have enough social power that the things that you're saying and the harm that you're doing are having physical consequences outside of your control. And I'm talking about, like, someone with 1 million Twitter followers, if they're posting, anti-Semitic content, and people start attacking Jewish people, then they need to have their Twitter account taken down. They don't need to be removed from society. I think that they need to go to therapy, and they need to work on whatever's causing them to hate the Jewish community so much. But they need to have their platform taken away. They need to have their social power taken away, because we can't have people influencing the masses to commit hate crimes. But when you have it on an individual level, people make mistakes. People say things they don't mean. People say things that they don't understand. And what we do in social justice, well, what a lot of us do is someone makes a mistake and we feel so much guilt and shame, and we're so anxious and embarrassed, and like we are so unsure of what's right and like what we should do, that we see someone else make a mistake and we just jump on criticizing them and judging them and condemning them. And what we should be doing instead is trying to pull them in and educate them and love them and hold them in our circle. And like, this is what Nora Samrin and Adrienne Maree Brown both talk about, is this concept of holding the circle. And the circle is like an idea of community, right? So imagine like you have the whole community standing in a circle and you're holding hands, and someone breaks off from the circle. And that's what happens when someone commits an act of harm to someone else within the community. They break the circle in the community. They not only harm that person, but they're affecting the entire community when they do that. So what we need to do is we need to heal that break in the circle. We need to try to pull them back in. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does, but you have to keep trying again and again and again. And you know what, at the end of the day, if eventually the whole community decides, you know, I think that this person shouldn't join back in our circle again and they need to find another circle, then that's up to that community to decide. And I don't have a specific number of times that they should try, but I think as long as someone's not actively harming people, I think that you should always try to pull them back into the community. And this is something that comes up a lot when I discuss ideas of a different way of living in society, where we have smaller localized farming and agriculture, where we have community-based markets where, you know, people specialize in certain skills and trade for goods and all of these things. And, you know, people say like, well, what about people that just don't want to grow their own food or don't want to, you know, be a part of the community? And I was actually reading a Leanne Simpson book called As We Have Always Done, and it's another beautiful, beautiful book about Indigenous freedom and radical resurgence is what she calls it. And in the book, she basically is talking about, because she is Anishinaabe, and she is in the book talking about how in her culture, they would have people that would sometimes, you know, stop participating in community activities. Like, you know, and this was at a time where you really, really needed all hands on deck, you know, like a bad harvest could mean a deadly winter, right? And so they would have people in the community that would just sit around all day and they wouldn't do anything. And what was discussed in the book was that although the community was frustrated with that person, they all understood that that person was clearly going through a part of their life and they were figuring themselves out and they were on their own journey, and the community needed to support them even though they, you know, were being quote unquote lazy. And that's what I always say to people is, as unfortunate as it is, there's going to be times where people aren't going to help for whatever reason. And, you know, you may be in a different position, but I personally would just, you know, give them food anyways. And I think that that's what we just need to do, is we need to have patience with people. And what was said in the book was actually that a lot of the time it was only really a 1 or 2 week period that this person would stop doing work. And what would happen when they were continually fed and, you know, provided for by the community, when they felt better and when they started, you know, working again and doing things, they did favors for all the people that supported them. And they, you know, really gave back to their community. They would work twice as hard because they felt grateful, they felt supported, they felt seen. Like, imagine you're going through something so difficult in your life and you can't help and everybody just shuts you out. Of course, you're not going to want to help them ever again. But instead, what if you go through something and you really let people down and they're still there for you? That is love. That is radical love. That is where I wanted to get in this episode. That is radical love. It's loving someone. It's loving someone in radical ways that are confusing to people, that make people stop and say, like, why would you do that? And it is something that is actively thought about, and you have to actively participate in radical love. It's not something that feels natural, because it's sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes you have to put your own, feelings aside and just step up. But what happens when you radically love people is you create a community that is deep and that is whole. And you don't have something shallow that breaks apart. You have a group of people that really, really, really care about each other. Like for me, I know that if I missed one of my friends' birthdays, they would not cut me out of their life. If I really dropped the ball, like if I forgot to come to their birthday party, I know that they would be upset with me, but they wouldn't shut me out. They wouldn't turn me away. They would be like, why weren't you there? What happened? Are you okay? Because they love me. They love me unconditionally. They love me even when I make mistakes. They love me even when I can't get out of bed. They love me even when I don't help them clean. All of these things. And sometimes it's frustrating when I'm cleaning up after a party and one of my friends is like, not helping at all. But at the same time, I love them anyways. I love them even if they never, help me. Because at the end of the day, if I feel like they're a friend to me and I feel like they love me and that they care about me, then sometimes when they're going through something, and even if it's something they did to themselves, like drinking too much the night before, I'm just going to clean up. I'm not going to force them to get up or scream at them because they're not helping me. I'm just going to love them through it, even though it's frustrating, even though, I'm trying to think of another good example. I know you already get the point, but I think I have another story. I thought I had another story. Maybe not. No, I think it was the As We Have Always Done. But in essence, like, there's so much to talk about with radical love, and Bell Hooks talks about it a lot, another author, and Adrienne Maree Brown in We Will Not Cancel Us, wonderful book, highly recommend. Turn This World Inside Out, Emergence of Nurturance Culture, amazing. And what I'm really encouraging you guys to do, after listening to this, is just take some time to reflect on, times that you've been hurt by someone, and it's a really difficult thing to do. So don't do it if you're in a place where you're going to be triggered, but I want you to try and think about what they went through and stories that they have told you, and what their parents were like, what their family was like, what their other relationships were like, how they acted, things that they said. And I want you to try and understand them more deeply. I want you to try and think of a reason why someone did what they did to you besides them just being awful and hating you. You don't have to ask them. It doesn't have to be true. You don't have to think about it for too long, but just maybe if you feel emotionally available enough to do so, I really, really, because it's so healing, try to understand why people do the things that they do, because it helps you become more self-confident. It helps you de-victimize yourself. It helps you live a better life. It helps you feel happier and more peaceful. And it also helps you in your future relationships. It helps you communicate. It helps you understand. It helps you empathize with other people. And it's so, so, so important. Like the title of this episode, in these next coming years, in this near future, we need to come together as a society and understand why we're doing the things that we're doing to each other. Because right now we're in a place where we are choosing to say, you know, how could you do this? You know, how could you do something like that? You know, that is so wrong. Instead of asking why, because what ends up happening is, my dad taught me this actually, is when we're constantly pointing fingers at other people, you have three fingers pointing back at yourself. And it doesn't even mean that you did anything wrong, but it just means that when you're judging and judging and judging, there is other things that are pointing back at you, and that are a reflection of you, and maybe a reflection of your surroundings and your community, that are causing this person to behave in the way that you're judging them for. And this is actually like this dates back like centuries and centuries and centuries. Like the lessons like this are written in almost every religious text I've ever heard about, ever, is this idea that we should not judge each other because we don't know what each other are going through, that we should just try to help each other and be kind to each other, and all of these things, right? Is because at a certain point, if you are able to heal, what you end up realizing is that you live a much better life in the end, having compassion, even though it's more difficult at the time. And that's what I want to leave you all with today, is kind of this notion that being good feels hard at the time, but it feels better at the end of the day. And not like literally, I mean metaphorically. So there has been times where I have, held my tongue. I have not said mean things, even though I've wanted to. And it didn't feel good at the time. And it didn't feel good the next day. But looking back on it, I'm so proud of myself and so happy that I reacted in a way that was authentic to who I am and my values and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to represent myself. And moving forward, in every situation that I have where I reacted with empathy and compassion, I never feel anxious or upset when I think about it, because I know that I did the best I could. I was kind, I was respectful, and whatever they were going through caused what they did to me. But in situations where I've reacted with anger and I've been vengeful and I've been hurtful, I reflect back on the situations and I cringe, because I don't want to be that person, and I don't want to be seen as that person, and I don't want to now be the person that was vengeful and hateful and whatever. So I think basically where I'm trying to get at is, sometimes the reward for being good is just that you are living your authentic self. Sometimes you don't get a random $100 e-transfer after you hold the door for someone. Sometimes you don't get any reward for being a good person. But what actually happens is you're rewarded by feeling whole in yourself and knowing and building your identity and living authentically as who you are, and being able to look back on your life and see the hurt and the pain and remember it, but also feel good about the way that you reacted and the way that you represented yourself and held yourself. And you won't look back with shame and guilt and fear and sadness. And that's the most important part. Is I always say this to my friends when they're going through something, especially like a breakup or anything, is I always say, I know that you're very hurt and you have every right to be upset, but I want you to think about who you are and the person that you are. And I want you to think that if you weren't angry right now, would you want to be saying these things? Would you want your next partner to be able to know how you reacted to this person. Like, obviously you have every right to be upset, and you can react however you want to, but at least for me, something that's not authentic to myself is like insulting someone. I don't like that, and every time that I've done it, when I've been angry at someone, I always regret it, and I think about things that I've said so often, and I feel so much shame and guilt looking back on it, and I don't feel healed from those situations because I didn't heal myself. I was just angry until I wasn't angry anymore. I couldn't will myself to be angry anymore, and then the anger kind of just stuck and I never healed, and now it feels like it's too late because it's been so long and I don't consciously feel angry anymore. But so I hope that some things from this episode have resonated with you. I know I kind of like went here and there and here and there, but I've repeated this because I'm trying to emphasize, not because like I want to be repetitive or anything, but please, please, please understand that I'm not saying that you are a bad person or that you shouldn't be reacting how you need to react. Sometimes when we're triggered, we say things, we do things, and it's not your fault. In the same way that you have to understand why someone did something to you, they should also have patience and understanding for why you reacted the way that you did. And actually, to close, I'm going to close with a little bit of a story. That is, I had a situation with friends of mine where my one friend, did something to my other friend that, it was understandable why they did what they did. I personally would have went about it differently, but it wasn't an evil act. It was like, it was more innocent than that. It wasn't something that was inherently morally wrong. It was something that was like, oh, weird you went about it that way, but what I'm saying is it wasn't morally wrong. But what happened is what they did was under the surface a very big trigger for my other friend. So immediately when this happened, my friend, who is like, I'm going to say the quote unquote victim, but I'm not like, saying that in a way that my other, you guys know what I mean. Anyways, my one friend number one, I'm going to say, who was like the quote unquote victim, and then friend number two is the quote unquote perpetrator. Again, I have compassion and understanding for both of these people. My one friend friend number one reacted very emotionally. It was explosive emotion and just like very angry, very like, how could you do this to me? Like, why would you do this to me? And friend number two, they didn't feel seen or heard or understood, so they immediately were like completely defensive, like invalidating of my other friend's feelings because they felt attacked. They felt like my other friend wasn't trying to understand why they did what they did. And what I ended up saying to my friend, because I ended up calling like friend number two, who was being very defensive, to try to understand why they were being defensive, because I know this person, I know that they didn't have bad intentions, and I know that they would want to apologize if they hurt someone's feelings. So when I asked, I could clearly hear immediately all they wanted me to do was listen to their side, or the quote unquote their side. You know what I mean? They wanted me to understand why they did what they did. And I said to them, no, I understand why you did that. Can you reflect on why, because of XXX, I'm not going to, reveal my friend's trauma on the podcast, but because of their own trauma in their childhood, could you understand why you doing this would cause them to have this kind of reaction towards you? And immediately they were like, oh, I see. Because what you have to understand is that sometimes even if you didn't do something that you think is that bad, people have triggers. People have lost parents, people have lost siblings, people have been, a part of abusive situations, people have, been bullied, people have been all of these things. So when you do something that isn't morally wrong and someone is reacting like extremely emotionally, try to take a step back and say they're likely reacting because they're triggered. Like what I did doesn't demand this reaction of someone. Therefore, I'm going to try to be patient and try to explain my side of the story when they're not triggered. So that's kind of the story I wanted to end with, is just that, like, at the end of the day, when you're in a fight with someone, or when you're arguing with someone, or when someone does something to you, and again, one more time, I'm not talking about physical violence. I'm talking about little things. I'm talking about missing a birthday. I'm talking about forgetting a gift. I'm talking about not showing up to a concert. I'm talking about bailing last minute, or breaking up, or cheating, or insulting someone, or whatever the case may be. I'm talking about things like that, not actual physical violence. When you're in a situation where someone has hurt you, both of you guys, I really hope, or actually, I'm going to rephrase. When you're in a position where someone has hurt you, or when you're in a position where you have hurt someone, in both cases, try to understand why this person is doing what they're doing. So if you have been hurt, try to understand, or try to ask them, if what you're really struggling with is why or how, or if what you're really struggling with in your anger is feeling not good enough or feeling triggered, try to have them, try to ask questions, try to understand where they're coming from, and try to understand why they did that. And then if you have hurt someone on the opposite end, try to understand that sometimes when people are really angry at you and when they're attacking you because you've hurt them, it's not because that they think you're evil. It's actually because they love you and they thought so highly of you and they really care about you, that they're triggered and they're exploding, and they are in an emotional state where they are not going to be able to calm down to a level that you would be in their shoes, because everybody has their own triggers. So next time you trigger someone and they're reacting to you, I want you to think about a time where you've been triggered and you've acted in a way that you look back and you're like, why was I so mad about that? And when they're coming at you, just try to say, like, hey, I am sorry I did this to you. Do you think we could talk about this later? Because it seems like you're really triggered right now. Like, whatever the case may be, just on both sides, try to have some understanding, try to have some empathy, try to have patience with people. We're all trying our best, okay? And we're all going to make it there, but if we keep shutting each other out and kicking each other out and canceling each other, we're never going to get there. We are never going to get there. So, and it all starts within our own communities, and that's where I want to finish it today, is that this starts with us and it ends with our whole communities, our countries, the whole world. It's going to start in our individual relationships, and it will influence the larger community. I can't tell you how many times I have had friends tell me about times that they have, like, heard me talk about these books that I talked about today, or other books and things that I've talked about in class, and then they've applied, patience and understanding and empathy into arguments that they've had, and they've actually, healed relationships that have been broken for so long. They've, regained a new understanding for their parents that they didn't have before. They've started hanging out with an old friend, or they've started contacting a sibling again, just because, and again, this isn't because of me, it's because of I was able to relay to them information that they could have accessed on their own without me, of course, but I just so happened to be the person that told them about these books or the concepts or whatever. And it's so beautiful to see like so many people in my life and in my community be able to understand each other and have compassion for each other. And it has created a life for me where in my circles, I am never ever afraid that I'm going to get canceled for making a mistake. You know, I'm never afraid my friends are going to shut me out. And I have shut people out. I have kicked people out of my life. I've been in friend groups that have kicked people out of and canceled them out of our lives, and I've been on that end of it, and I feel so lucky to be in a position now where I feel like I can be authentically myself and make mistakes with my friends, and they'll still love me unconditionally, and they'll understand me, and they'll meet me where I'm at. And I want that for everyone. I want that for all of us. And how you build a community like that is it starts with you. Unfortunately, when you can't see any of that compassion around you, you have to be the person that inspires other people to be compassionate. And it doesn't always happen at first. Sometimes you have to expand your understanding 2, 3, 5 times before the person that you're being compassionate to starts being compassionate to others and to you. And you can cut it off and you can set a boundary and say, I'm sorry, I'm spending my energy being compassionate to you when you're not giving me that same grace. But when you want to see that transformation in your life and in your community, you have to be that spark. You have to be the start. You have to be the person that sets the example, that is the role model, and that is hard. That is really hard. It's emotionally demanding. It's draining. It's tiring. It's exhausting. It's very, very difficult. And unfortunately, it's just what has to happen. If we want to see love in our communities, we need to bring love to our communities. So, actually, I think that's a perfect sentence to close on. If we want to see love in our communities, we need to bring love to our communities, which means we need to understand each other, we need to have empathy for each other, and we need to have patience with each other. And with that, I'm going to close and tell y'all to have a wonderful, wonderful time until I speak to you again.